swear they just won't answer me. I call and out, are you afraid I'll bury you down with your precious keeps? If legacy is listening, I'll come for you as well, as I suspect you'll have a hand to play. If I see their face and there's room for two in me, nothing's gonna stop the war until we're done. Until we're done! Until we're done! Until we're done! Until we're done! 'Cause I'm not killing time.
When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Meta Show. Today is March the 27th, 2021. I'm joined here by the Matani. We've got our cast of veritable, legendary, important people behind the curtain. We're going to bring them out here in a second.
Wow. So, yeah, guys, we have a big show today, and it's probably going to be me not talking too much because a lot of this is going to famous last words. Everybody is screwed. I'm wearing a black shirt because I was too lazy to change into a red shirt or a blue shirt. So who knows what the spirit of the herf is going to do. But we are going to be talking a lot of really, really, really gritty CCP, CSM stuff. And we have assembled an amazing, whereby we, I mean Brisk has assembled an amazing panel of guests for us. So who are we going to be hearing from today?
We have joining us here shortly, we will have Dunk Dinkle from Brave. We're going to have Ken Feld from Pandemic Legion, as well as Anominate from Goons. Ken and Anominate are both current CSM 15 members. Dunk is a CSM 14 member. And both Ken and Dunk are very senior industry people that have been doing industry stuff in EVE for a very long time. And if there's anybody in the game that understands what is going on right now with the industry changes we've just had dropped on our heads on Friday, it is these two. So that's why we have them here. So are you guys ready? Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's bring
them on. Our top
on.
story, obviously, is immense industry iterations incoming with our guest coming up now. All right, everybody, welcome back. As you can see, we are joined by Dunk Dinkle, Ken Feld, and Anominate, as well as myself and the Matani. Dunk and Ken have been on the show before, and Anominate is one of our constant co-hosts. He might as well be a co-host, how many times he's been on. So I want to say happy Friday, or I guess Saturday to everybody. Happy major blog changes dropped in the middle of an afternoon on Friday that kind of really have upended everything. And I don't think it's too much to say, or too much hyperbole to say that these changes are going to have a massive impact on the subcap meta, on the capital meta, on what we do in nullsec, on what we do in everywhere else in the game, and it's also going to cause a lot of major crazy changes to industry. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to throw it over to Dunk first, and we've got a little bit of a slideshow. If we want to throw that up, we can talk about what is changing, what currently exists now, and what we expect in the future. So Dunk, do you want to go through this? Walk us through this presentation here real quick.
Sure,
I'm going to throw it up on the screen.
Go ahead and bring up those slides. But I think I think people like Ken and I and some of the other industry people that talk about the deep magic of industry, I think we're all pretty much in agreement that no one really can grok exactly how complicated this change is and what's going to happen. So the things we talk about today are really going to be like first takes at it. I don't think any of these things we're going to say are wildly wrong, but so much of this just comes from, how are the players going to react? How are some of these drops going to work? And we just don't know that yet. So we're all in for a bumpy ride for at least the next 3 to 4 months and how this is going to work.
All right. So what you're looking at on the screen here, essentially, we'll walk you through it just because I don't know if everybody understands exactly what it takes to do the industry stuff. We are a nullsec politics show. We talk about PvP all the time. We talk about the war and things that are going on. We don't talk a lot about the nuts and bolts, nitty gritty stuff of industry. And I know that Matani and I are both kind of bored by this, but this is critically important. So we want to walk you guys through it. So just real quick, right now, to build something, typically every item in the game that you can build, which is most of them, comes from minerals that are an asteroid ore, whether it's in a mining anomaly in nullsec, whether it's in an asteroid belt somewhere else. You mine those rocks, you compress them, you do what you got to do, and you get the minerals out. And that's what those are the building blocks. Salvage from shipwrecks, planetary interaction materials, PI, and you've got Tech 2 components come from moon goo, and T3 components are from wormhole gas, and then you get assorted drops from NPCs from exploration sites and those types of things. That's those are the building blocks for building stuff in Eve right now.
And
all
I
of
think
that's
the key
going
thing,
to change.
Yeah, the key thing here is in the past, you were kind of vertically siloed. Like there's exceptions and a little crossover, but basically, if you were in T3 industry, you were all about wormhole gases and you didn't really give a shit about other stuff. If you were into T2 manufacturing, you cared about moon goo and reacting that on up, and you really didn't give too much care about other stuff. What's changing is to build bigger things now, especially, you're going to have to care about all the things, right? So people are going to have to diversify. It's going to require a much wider range to build some of the bigger things, which is, a kind of fundamental change to the game that's going on right now.
So on the screen now, what they've added in, and I'll let Ken and Dunk go into this in more detail. So in addition to all the previous stuff we just showed, they're requiring 6 new gases from wormholes, 16 gases from low sec and null sec that are added into various different components, 2 new P2 products from planetary interaction materials. Then, once you get all that stuff, there's a bunch of different reactions that have been added that you're going to need in order to create subcomponents that go into building these ships. The 12 new gas phase reactions, 3 new intermediate reactions from moon goo, 2 new composite reactions, 12 new T2 components that require moon goo and gas, 2 new capital components that require a bunch of different stuff, plus drops, and then 4 new advanced capital construction components. This is all going essentially into making everything a little bit more complicated. But guys, go into more detail about how big a difference this is for existing industry types. Ken, you were talking to me about this before. What do you think? What do you think this means for existing industry guys?
Well, you kind of have to look at where you started. Prior to this, if you wanted to build a frigate or a Titan, use the same exact components. So if CCP wanted to change the price of a Titan, it changed the price of a frigate. There was no way to decouple anything, and it was all a ratio. And now I'm going to use made up numbers here, but like 5 frigates equaled a cruiser, 10 cruisers equal a battle cruiser, 4 battle cruisers equal a battleship, 8 battleships equaled a carrier, 10 carriers equaled a super carrier, and so on. And you could ratio the minerals out fairly easily. So much so back in the reprocessing, before they nerfed reprocessing days, we would reprocess Archons and make Thanatoses or make super carriers out of them fairly easily. And it was completely the same. So now in the 5,000 v 5,000 era of players, and everyone wanting to turn this into Serenity with 5,000 Titans versus 5,000 Titans, they had to come up with a way to decouple all this stuff. And I'm going to start with saying, just because I'm explaining it does not mean I give tacit approval to this. This is the hand that the CSM were dealt, and the CSM worked with CCP to come up with what you see in the dev blog. It was fairly different from what we were originally shown in October. Okay, so that said, all right, now battle cruisers and below, very little changes. Maybe some changes. You take away some trit, you add in some pyrite and some mexilon, but they're straight minerals. Now, T1 minus faction. So just T1, the Kestrel, the Punisher, just straight T1 hulls. Those are strictly minerals. Nothing's changed other than a little refactoring of the minerals. And they, in theory, should start to get cheaper, because as you mine more and more minerals and you have stockpiles and the price of minerals drop, those ships will get cheaper. I think this is really geared towards the NPE. They want a new player to come into the game, fly a ship, blow it up, go, I'll go to Jeddah or wherever and get another one, and not care, right? They want these to be absolutely disposable. Once you get into battleships and you start flying bigger stuff, you got a little more skin in the game. Now the complexity starts to ramp up. I'm hoping for a slight increase in battleship power to go along with this new complexity, but so far my lobbying efforts have not been as good as others. So then you move into capitals, and then you start getting a lot more complicated, and then you get into supers and Titans, and you get a ton more complicated. But if you look at it from the 10,000 foot view, This allows CCP in the future to tweak something here and make Titans more expensive, but frigates cheaper. Or if carriers or dreads start becoming a problem or something, whatever they want to do, then they can change the price of a subset without affecting everything else. They could easily change the drop rate on gas or something like that and make carriers go from, I'm going to make up numbers, but say they're $5 a hull right now, can make them down to $2 a hull, but Titans only change a couple bill as well. Instead of now, if you wanted to do that, a Titan would go from $130 in minerals down to $100 in minerals because the ratios are fixed. So when you start decoupling all this stuff, now they can work on different areas. That's also produced some side effects, which I know people aren't happy about. It's homogenized frigates, cruisers, battle cruisers into basically the tiers of battle cruisers and that kind of stuff. That is a more a matter of you don't have the racial ore anymore. Used to be in a Mars space, I think you got Pyro, Kernite, and Caldari space and this kind of stuff. So one space would have a little bit more Mex, one space would have a little bit more Pyrite, and the ships reflected that. The ore is more homogenized now, so they homogenize the product or the materials so that it's easier to balance later. I would like to see it a little more varied, but at the end of the day, I can see why when you have 100+ blueprints that you homogenize groups of them together to make it easier in the long run. So you're not playing with just zillions of numbers, just billions. And that's kind of my take on where we are, where we're going. Anytime you want to talk about how much does it cost to build now? Well, yeah, that's great. The dev blog was yesterday and everybody's worried about how much it's going to cost today. But there's going to be another dev blog in a couple weeks, not a couple months, whatever, sometime soon. The next domino will drop. Redistribution is going to happen. They've already started redistribution with ISK, with the dynamic bounty system in the ESS. Redistribution of ore is coming. They say that capital mining changes are coming next in the blog. When that dev blog hits, everything we talk about today as far as ISK is worthless. Everything changes again. And we just have to deal with the hand we're dealt now and carry on.
And the CCP can ultimately adjust the supply of anything here they want to. And one thing that I think is just a little bit weird is how over the years CCP has added, they've added like T3s and new ship classes, and these new ship classes then have this one type of material that they need to be built. And finally kind of unifying that all so that all of those materials that have been added over the years are now part of sort of everything. I mean, that's kind of been long overdue.
Yeah.
So I don't want to lose the Matani here. So do we want to talk about what we think?
We already did.
This is good. Yeah. We're already. I can see Mittens and I are both kind of like, oh man, I can listen to Ken. He's going to make me go to sleep. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, so let's look at we had a brief
Titan's
conversation
more
about
expensive.
Well, here's the thing: impacts. Let's look at what the immediate impacts are, and then we can talk a little bit about potentially down the road type stuff. So, going back to the spreadsheet. So the highlights basically that we have from that was a takeaway between what Donk and Ken told us earlier when we were working on this. Essentially, the simple and Ken has said some of this stuff. Essentially, the simplest T1 ships are easier to make. Faction ships slightly harder. Battleships are much harder because they require far more components, and they require things that they didn't require before, like PI and T2 materials. They've taken away the need for a lot of tritanium out of supers and caps, but they put other things in that makes it harder. And the result is caps need a wider variety of materials, super caps need a wider variety of materials. That is, as Ken said, going to give them the ability to change things and decouple, making changes to super caps to make them less prevalent or make them less or more expensive or whatever they want to do to try to deal with things like super cap proliferation. They can do that without having an impact on every other type of ship in the game. They in addition to what we've been talking about, they also changed how stand-up fighters for Citadels are built. They used to require carrier fighters. Now they're going to require the T1s instead. It It's bringing them in line with every other type of ship in the game. But then the one thing we do expect, and I think everybody has said this, is we expect, at least in the short term, an upward price trend for all big ships and for all these new materials, because that's what we expect is going to happen. The day that the blog dropped, within about 20 minutes, Jita was cleared out of gas and pyrite and a bunch of other stuff because people were buying the stuff on the expectation that it was going to go up and they're going to sit on it. And we expected that.
I think all of the internal Alliance super capital markets cleared out instantly.
And they did. I mean, you can't get, I mean, I know Dunk and I were laughing because it seemed like there were a couple people that always are late and didn't realize what happened. But for the most part, at least for Imperium, I saw a lot of stuff getting pulled down. And I was talking to Darkshines and the guys because I have a Titan that I'm trying to sell. And I was like, yeah, I hope we can get some money for this thing now because, you know, it's going to be worth a lot more in a couple of weeks. But yeah, people are buying battleships, or people are buying all of these hulls that look like they're going to be tougher to build because we anticipate, at least in the beginning, that there are going to be some serious issues in getting some of the basic stuff constructed. And that's one of the reasons why they're going to roll this out in 2 parts. Ken, can you talk about the rollout for people so they understand how that's going to work?
Okay, so the dev blog has the new SDE. There's a link to it. If you're a web app guy, you'll know what the SDE is. But basically, sites like Fuzzworks were updated within a few hours of the blog coming out. So you have to put -update on the end of the blueprint, but all of the new blueprints that are going to be added to the game in the first phase are already out and available on the websites for people that have updated their websites to use. So the way this is going to work, the first part of April, there's going to be 2 phases in April. They haven't put out the dates yet publicly. But when the first phase rolls out, all the new blueprints are going to be added and seeded, and you'll be able to buy them, start research. And then when the second phase comes out, that's when all the changes happen. The hulls, the hull blueprints for Titans and carriers and all that kind of stuff that adds all the new materials in will get added, and you will need all those to build them. You comfy?
He's going to bed.
I'm getting there.
He's going to bed.
I got a blanket. It's good.
Yeah. One thing I want to
pillow. He's set.
Yeah. One thing I want to add about kind of where we stand. A couple weeks ago, when the blog came out for Tritanium, everyone was like, "Oh my God! All the nullsec alliances are going to need a high-sec mining group to mine all this Tritanium." Everyone's forgot about that now because to build a Titan used to require 3.2 billion trit. Now it requires about 600 million trit. Oh, we don't need that high-sec mining group now. Shove them all in wormholes. We need wormhole gas. When the next blog comes out, it's going to be the next thing.
That point is critical. And that's one of the things we're not going to do on the show today is, at least I'm not going to do this. Maybe the other guys will want to do it. I'm not going to come out and say definitively these are good changes or these are bad changes or this is going to be great for us or this is going to be shitty for us. Because the reality is we have no idea what the players decide to do, how this rolls out. And then in the end, once we start seeing what the players are going to do, as Ken said, it's entirely like, we know that this is not the end of, maybe it's the end of scarcity, but it's not the end of the ecosystem rebalancing that they're doing. They've talked about redistributing stuff. We've been talking about redistribution for a while, and we know that that's potentially going to happen. And now that they're setting themselves up with all of these different ways to decouple the different types of industry from each other, they can make these changes and plus something up here and reduce something over here without having a huge, massive impact on everything. So that, I think they're setting themselves up with a bunch of levers that they can press and pull that will make it easy to fix this stuff if we realize that something is completely out of whack and it's not working.
I'm a little bit in the short term there.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm a little bit concerned there because they are adding all of these levers, and whatever happens is going to be interesting, but I don't know, I sort of get the sense that CCP is manning the control panel at Chernobyl and they just want more levers that they can mess with. And I'm not convinced that they know what they're doing.
Well, I think the really good thing
I'm not sure they even realize that they are working on something that is essentially a nuclear reactor where if they pull the wrong lever, everything is going to spiral completely out of control in a way that they can't recover from.
I can tell you that at least 2 devs are acutely aware of that fact. Now, whether they'll listen and we can talk to them, hey, we'll CSM will certainly try. But I know that, and the 2 I'm talking about, and I don't know their CCP names, but they are acutely aware of that fact.
Well, I think the huge thing to take away is this, as Brisk mentioned, the decoupling of basically subcaps from capitals and what it takes to do that, right? And that allows, something I've been in favor of is if you want to reduce or adjust the role of capitals and supers in the game, then touch them, but leave the caracals and the drakes and all the subcap stuff. Let that still be things that they should be your ammo, right? And I think this finally gives them that opportunity. I'm hopeful that they can adjust because the players are the best min-maxers in all of video gaming. And as I've said before, all it takes is one person to figure out the loophole. And in 3 hours, 1,000 people know the loophole. And in a day, 10,000 people know the loophole. And they have to be able to adjust to those loopholes that will inevitably be found. As long as they can keep iterating to keep getting the target that they want, that's great.
So what you're saying is that this will all be great as long as when they release these changes, they continue iterating on them afterwards and don't just release them and then move on to something else.
Womp womp.
I'm trying to be optimistic here. I'm really trying to be optimistic here, right?
Yeah, the only good thing about that is the iterations that it's going to take for this are numbers in a database. It's not going to take large.
Yeah, thank God this is just dial changes, right?
That work.
Now, at this point, it's just dial changes, so it should be relatively easy. All right, I got one last slide. We're going to talk about potential impacts, because in addition to the changes, there are some significant things that I think a lot of the other shows that have talked about this have missed. And I want to highlight them because I think it's pretty important for us to be clear in terms of what this really means, especially for players, because when this thing drops, a lot of things are going to change, and a lot of people are going to be scratching their heads trying to catch up. So the final slide we have here, what has happened and what may happen. First of all, everybody's industry spreadsheets and apps are generally out of date. I know, as Ken said, Fuzzworks has updated their stuff. They're trying to update those as quickly as possible. For at least the next week or so, everybody's going to be trying to make sure that whatever they're looking at for moving forward is correct. But then they've also got this lag time for at least a week or two where the old system still works. So you got to have that plus the new stuff. That's going to be a pain in the ass. Second thing, and this is huge, especially for those of us in nullsec in the middle of the biggest war in the history of New Eden, there's going to be an immediate drop in the number of players who can build capitals, because they're requiring a significant number of level 5 science skills that were not required before, where typically you could get somebody and have all level 4 skills and they could build anything in the game. Now there are multiple of these parts that go into Titans and Supers in particular that are going to require level 5 production, and that's another million skill points. I mean, even if you have 5, 6, 7, 8 million skill points banked, you're going to have to spend that immediately, and not everybody's going to have that available. Not everybody's going to have the ability or the desire to skill inject that stuff in. So and if they do, it's going to be expensive. It's going to cost them ISK. So that's definitely an issue. And I think the third thing to keep in mind is there's going to be an increased pressure on logistics around the game, because again, they are making it clear that you cannot be self-sufficient anywhere, requiring wormhole gas and then putting that gas in nullsec and lowsec in certain places. You're going to have to move stuff around. Gas you can't compress. Gas doesn't fit in ore holes, so you got to move it. It's going to be a pain in the ass to get some of this stuff. So I think logistics guys are going to have a big thing. And then I think the most immediate thing, the biggest thing that's going to be out there that all of us are talking about, and I'll throw this back up when I go into it, is everything cap up is worth way more than it was a day ago. And it's going to be, at least in the short term. Now, granted, as we said, long term, anything's possible. They could change all these numbers. But right now, the best estimates that I've seen, and it includes estimates from Ken and Dunk and other folks that know what they're doing, is that prices for super caps and capitals are likely to increase between 2 and 4 times what they are right now. So if you can buy a fitted Titan for 800 billion ISK, 80 billion ISK right now, when this hits in the short term, that Titan is going to be worth, just in the materials alone, between 220, 250 billion ISK, 4 times what it is right now. That is going to put a lot of pressure on Alliance SRP. That's going to put a lot of pressure on industry types building these things. It's going to put a lot of pressure on FCs deciding whether they take a fight or not, because knowing that, especially, groups that are having trouble and pressure already on finances, we're making those, this might be a situation where for the first time, people go into a big fight knowing that they're not going to be able to replace their losses in any recent kind of time factor or ever.
Are we talking about impacts now and impacts on the war? Because I can put the blanket.
You can put the blanket away. We're at the part you like.
Okay,
now.
Cool. I mean, like, here's one of the things, guys, is in terms of like roles and responsibilities and stuff. These guys are experts. This is very important stuff they're talking about, and it does make my simple little space politician brain short out. And where I tune back in is the conclusions and the impact on sort of the galactic chessboard. I think it's fucking hilarious. I mean, I think it's absolutely just stunningly hilarious. I mean, I would, I guess I took the blanket out and the black shirt is the first thing that I see, but man, does it suck to be in Legacy.
Sorry, dog. Sorry, dog.
It would be a fucking shame to be poor going into this, regardless of what CCP does. I don't know if the Titans are going to cost 200 billion ISK. I don't know if the Titans are going to cost 300 billion ISK. I don't know if we're going to see a 15 billion ISK dreadnought. I have no idea what any of this shit is going to be. But all I know is, man, it would suck to be poor right around now.
Gosh, don't worry, we have some new space to make money in now.
Oh yeah, totally. Settle in Fortress Quarius. Settle in Fortress period basis. I hear Quarius is a fortress. I don't mean to, Dunk is here to talk about stuff. I'm not meaning to be shitting to Dunk, but when we're talking about like war impact,
it's all good. No, it's a real.
Couldn't have come at a worse time for Legacy, and. We have, since the beginning of all this shit, said that the goal of the Imperium is to murder as many of the strategic assets of our various enemies. Strategic assets, of course, being Titans, supercarriers, dreadnoughts, all that stuff. We don't know what CCP is going to do. They're saying they're raising the price, but one of the things that I said on the fireside earlier is that I don't want us to be committing to saying this is good, this is bad, what the impacts are going to be, because one of the things about this is that CCP is paying attention to what's going on, and if they see that the players, and we know that CCP wants to get rid of stockpiles. So if the players say, oh, we're all going to be building thousands of Megathrons or thousands of rocks or like whatever the players are going to do to buy things off the market and then try to anticipate whatever next scarcity crap is coming down the line in the next dev blog or whatever, I think that there's a pretty reasonable risk, a regulatory risk, of if CCP sees one of the major economic entities committing to one strategy or another, that they'll then come over the top and, just move things around a little bit. Kind of like how people who like invested heavily in thulium years ago because they were sure that thulium was going to go to the moon got fucked. So one of the things about this that is fascinating to me from a wartime perspective is if Titans and supercarriers and dreadnoughts are going to be more expensive at the end of this through whatever process, whatever beep boop swizz gigs dials, whatever. I think it's great. I mean, it sort of validates our entire strategy from the very beginning before this fucking war began, because we expected these nerds to 3-1 on us and that we were going to focus on murdering their Titans as best as we can and make sure that we have the biggest stack of strategic assets at the end of this when the music stops. And, the Imperium has a chair, PanFam has a chair. I guess Legacy is going to try to take our chair away from us so they can sit and delve, or Fortress Quarius. We'll see what happens. I think the impact is hysterical. I mean, it's absolutely, and we have the luxury of saying it's hysterical because our war bonds worked and everybody else's didn't. Well, that's not necessarily true. Some people had war bonds that worked out okay for them. I think NC dots went well, but the Legacy situation is pretty much.
What is a war bond?
A war bond is a complicated financial instrument that I understand about as effectively as I understand industry and production. But I know that it results in me having tons of ISK to spend on whatever the Imperium needs, which is very handy because, as you guys were able to use in the Casino War, it was very nice to be able to wallet tank and go, well, we're never just throw money at the problem, and there you go. And that's kind of where we are.
Basically, to put it in a nutshell, what it is the Alliance takes a loan out from its members and pays back the loan in interest over time because the Alliance has income streams. Exactly.
Oh.
And then so
So that's
basically,
something for poor people then.
no, it's not. It's something. It's something for
poor
for
people like
governments
Goldman Sachs.
to fund
Kinda like
the
Goldman
way they do
Sachs.
things.
Okay,
we did it
fair
in
enough.
World War
Very
II and elsewhere.
We are absolutely actually.
But
you're
right now,
we're
if
it's
you
not
had
securitization.
poor and
If you
broke.
had 50 trillion in your Alliance wallet, you can't buy a Titan. There, I watched them as the
absolutely.
stream went out. It's bing, 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 right off public contracts. Now you might have some private ones, but they're hard to come by right now. No
They
matter how
are
that's it.
risky you
indeed,
have.
man. I
Everybody's
would
sitting
really
on 'em.
hate to have some reimbursement bills to pay for Titans or trying to source hulls to reimburse Titans, especially if anybody hadn't paid them all back after M2. Gosh, that would suck.
The nice thing about the way that they're doing this is that CCP can still control the price of super capitals. If they want the 200 billion-esque Titan to be the thing, they're creating a problem.
But think about how they've already gone.
Well,
Think about how they've already gone.
I always
Trit
point.
dropped.
When this stuff happens, I point back to what they did in the game when it was first released, where those of us who were there in the first few days, we were sitting there mining Arcanor and Bistet in our rookie ships, selling it to NPC buy orders. We got very rich very quickly. I guess CCP got alarmed by that, and then they basically redrew the map and moved all the ore to what it looks like today. And so that created two separate classes. Those of us who were there before, who like we had our cruiser BPOs, we were flying around in like fully fit cruisers, and you had all the other people then who were just struggling to buy like their next best frigate. And that gap, you could see that gap in the game until like 2009. And it took that long for that extra little edge that those people got to sort of finally, whatever you call it, work its way out. And if they're going to do 200 billion-esque Titans, that's going to create the same kind of problem.
And Fried Jedi in the chat asks, why is a 200 billion-esque Titan a problem? Wasn't that the point to make them rare? The problem is that they're not rare now. The problem is, and I think if anything, there's an issue with this, is that it creates bigger income disparity gaps and bigger gaps between the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor. I don't know. Those of us who have all of our stuff, we're happy. We got our shit. I got mine. We can open space for Republicans. It's great.
That was the thing I pointed out in the beginning when I first read this. It was all of the rich industrialists are going to get even filthier richer now because of this, right? Like the gap between starting out in industry and if you've already been established in industry. Look, when all these blueprints and reactions and all this drop, like I don't care what they cost. I'm just going to buy them all and I'm going to get going and I'll be ready to roll. If you're just starting out, you can't touch some of these investments you need to get rolling here. So I think that most immediate impacts we're going to see is there's going to be a huge rush to build Titans and Capitals by hook or by crook or however people can swing it before these changes go in because they're going to lock in the costs. The overall calculation of how the economy, how it's all going to go, this is so many variables changing simultaneously. You can't calculate it. It's just too much. Like no one can get their heads around exactly what's going to happen.
I agree 100%.
But I think with the war thing, though, I think it does.
I wanted to
change.
ask you, what do you think the impact is going to be on the war dump?
Well, that's where I'm not, I'm not an FC. I'm not a combat FC, right? That's not my thing that I do in the game. But somebody's going to be doing the thinking about, do I commit 100 dreads? Do I commit 200 dreads? Do I commit my supers and titans? And suddenly that calculus, and I don't do that calculus, but the people who think about that, right? They are going to have a new math to do about when do you commit capital forces and when do you not commit capital forces. I just have no idea how that's going to go. But it's a very different thing than it was last week of what it is today.
It's not as different as you think.
I think dreads are, going to be the biggest change. Like right now, both sides will throw away dreads anytime it's remotely.
Right? That's the whole idea.
But a 10 million-esque dread, that's not really that disposable anymore.
But
exactly.
That's one thing the CSM worked hard for, was to keep the ratios the same. So in pre-patch or pre-dev blog,
that's accurate.
15 dreads equaled a tightener. I forget the number. I think it was 34 or something like that. But whatever, that many dreads equaled a titan. That ratio still holds pretty true now. So your calculations are the same. It's just your butcher's bill is higher. But the number math is exactly the same yesterday as it is tomorrow, as it'll be the day after the patch. It's just at the end of it, instead of only losing 200 billion, you lost 800 billion or something like that. Right.
I mean, it's a Vegas analogy,
is still the
right?
same.
Like you can say the ratio is the same, and that's valid. And I'm not sure how that plays out with carriers, and I don't really need to know. The finance guys, well, you guys will sort it out, and I'll end up with the conclusions, and we'll go from there. But the stakes have been raised. Right. I think a fair statement, regardless of the calculations, essentially, if we were playing at make it a Vegas gambling analogy, if we were playing at a low limit table, we are now purely in the high roller Ferraris and Bugattis. You don't belong at this table if you're not willing to crash 30 Keepstars into a tree or crash 300 Titans into a tree or whatever it is. And that also means that the other thing is that alliances that are healthy and successful have a way of replenishing losses, right? That's one of the most important things is you always are going to lose stuff. How do you replace the things that you're losing and get in the hands of your troops as fast as you can? And a net effect of all of the bar getting raised here is, I think, and sociologically, I think this is really interesting. This isn't necessarily war related, but I think what we're going to see is exactly what Kenneth and the crew were saying there is income inequality essentially is going to increase, right? The people that are already wealthy and established and have large organizations with a long history of adapting to CCP changes, right? Because for a group like Pandemic Legion or a group like Goon Swarm, something like, hey, CCP has flipped a table and everything is fuckered, and what are you going to do about it? It reminds me of that Hangman, first time sort of meme. And so whenever there's a scenario like that, that's one of the reasons why I'm not too in the weeds about the nuances of how these things are going to work out, because we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. We know that we'll be able to regenerate. And I think that in many cases, the aftermath of M2 was a test to show everyone in the game how each of the entities that are involved in the war replaces their losses, because we all had to abruptly find 100 or more Titans, depending, in various chunks and groups. How do you get those Titans? How do you get them redistributed to your members? How fast can you pay off your debt? What's your financial backstop? Like, are you selling Alliance tournament ships? Are you issuing war bonds and they're actually loans, or whatever joke goes here? And by raising the stakes and raising essentially the entry, the cost of entry, the ante to do this kind of thing, let's say that you have in the Imperium or in Pandemic Legion, you have somebody who wants to do industry and they are a smallholder and they're going, oh shit, I'm fucked because there's all these new skills that I need to get injectors for. Well, if you're part of a big successful organization who is full of successful, well-off, well-established people, it's a lot easier to set up a social safety net where essentially you can say, okay, hey guys, we're going to launch a program and I'm not committing to this. We'll have to see how things go. But one of the avenues we could take is for people that need the assistance to help with the industry is the state purchases injectors and hands them to the people to get the skills injected in a way. And you don't have that in less well capitalized, less well managed, less established entities. So again, like the smaller bumfuck legacy alliance number 72 that nobody ever heard of, that was living in Faith Abilis until last week. Like there are alliances that are sort of being uncovered as we lift the rocks up in the galactic southeast as Imperium forces are torching Legacy's home, where they're saying that it's not their home and they're totally going to live fine in Aquarius. We're finding these little alliances. Those guys are screwed, right? Regardless of the Imperium blowing their shit up, regardless of any of the other war stuff, like how are those dudes going to get skill injector help to get off the ground, to start getting, adapt to the crisis? So as usual, this is my favorite analogy, and it's the analogy that we repeat over and over and over again on Firesides and on meta shows. You guys know where we're going. It's the bodybuilder analogy. If you take a bodybuilder and somebody who has never lifted a weight in their life and you say, okay, guys, here's a perfectly fair thing. Everyone has to carry 100 pounds more than they're currently carrying. And you take a 100-pound weight and you hand it to a fucking dude who can bench whatever the fuck he feels like. He's like, well, this sucks, but I carry 500 or 1,000 pounds around all the time. So 100 pounds more, no big deal. You hand that weight to a dude who's not lifted weights, they're really, really in trouble. And that is sort of the challenge with income inequality. That's the challenge with big nerfs that require organization and investment. And that's how you see these differential effects in adaptation between these entities.
So what Vince is trying to say is don't skip leg day. That's what he's trying to say.
But that's one thing that's affected this war, I think, more than others. Mm-hmm. Goon Swarm in the past, how and I talked about this a little last time I was on the Meta Show. How many graves of people that have retired out of PL are flipping over because PL has an industry ring right now? And for the first time, goons are fighting an opponent that is as well funded and has a logistics and a backbone that can support the war as they have faced this time. Irrespective of the numbers, the fact that we have is ships ready, available, SRP, that kind of stuff. Now, maybe some of the outliers may have issues, but the mainline people coming at you are fully funded and fully logistically ready to go anytime, anywhere. And I don't think goons have faced that ever. They could always iss their way out of it. Now, maybe
casino war side. I would say maybe when
let's just maybe turn it away from arguing the war impact, right? That's maybe another meta show.
I do have a point I want to make.
I want to bring up one thing, right? Is that it doesn't get talked about is people rat and do things in capitals right now, right? They are carrier ratters, dread ratters. People do it in supers. People use capitals for not just fighting wars. And so the math on that is radically changing as well. If you were going to go out and dread rat, and you might have a blinged out 4 billion, 5 billion ISK dread that you would run, whatever sites they run in one siege cycle and all that kind of stuff. Your math, if you take a loss, has just radically changed, right? And so the profitability, all that stuff, and that's far outside.
Dread ratting is often in wormholes, by the way. Go ahead. Rat's going to chat. Go ahead.
Right. So it's not just war, right? So people that are listening or, that aren't really in all about the war, like this changes everything about capital gameplay right now. All the risk reward numbers change. And when that ratting income, it plays into alliances, getting, all of it. It's so complex. It's so multivariable that anyone who says that they know how this is going to end up is just, they don't have a clue. I mean, this changes so much in the game. And we won't know it'll be summertime before we really see how
summertime 2022.
Right.
Well,
it's going to be a while.
But the first round of it, right? Like how much are these things really going to cost? What's it really going to take? How many people are really going to get some of these things? Like it is so massive that anyone who's predicting, whether you're complaining that this is the end of the world or you're running around in circles like it's the best thing ever, like nobody can say that right now. It's just so upending of so much of the way the game is played, not just the war, but if the war wasn't happening and people were trying to rebuild their cash, like carrier and dread ratting, like that's all different now.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think needs to be addressed, because when you have changed in such a way, you have so altered the risk reward proposition for a lot of the current things that you do in the game, they're going to have to go back and look at that. And I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't talked about any of the other stuff in the dev block. I'll go over a little bit of it briefly. I mean, essentially, and I'll throw it up on the screen so you guys can see. They did the update to industry, but then there's also, a whole bunch of other stuff that they threw in here at the end, which was they're going to right here, they're going to do Econ blueprints are going to change to make it a little easier to get stuff in here. You got the DBS is going to get changed again, and then they're going to change the ESS so that they can increase the time to the auto pay, because there was so many there was so many people that were getting auto paid stuff out so quickly that the pirates couldn't get around and get to them at all. And then of course in here you also have some pretty crazy stuff here. You've got the reserve bank keys to the ESS. They finally tell us 8 trillion ISK is sitting behind there. And then the one thing that I think everybody was freaking out about, and yes, I'm happy I got to use my telestrator. Boom, right here. A new intel tool is coming that will create novel defenses against covert operations in New Eden. And I think everybody is operating the assumption that is, AFK cloaky camping. And we're going to go from there. So that's all stuff in there. But I think if you're changing, back to my original point, if you're changing the risk reward scenario or setup for a lot of these things, I think they're going to have to do something to provide some kind of a reason for capital PvE. And I know some people are going to freak out when I say capital PvE, but I'll tell you this right now. These are expensive ships. It would be nice if they could pay for themselves over time. It would be nice to put them in space and give hunters something to target. It would be nice for all of us to be able to get some more Titans out there to blow up. You know, the days of
I think
Titans
Old
fighting.
Mecha Gold taught us all what happens when you decide you want to exterminate capital PvE, and then you succeed and you realize that's the only thing you ever actually did in the game.
And then boom, there's nothing to do, and it sucks. So I think I would like to see some kind of an anomaly that's designed specifically for supers and Titans. It doesn't have to be. It has to be something that's lucrative enough that it makes sense for them to put that kind of risk on the field. But it needs to be something to put the risk on the field, so you get these ships out of space. You guys we can't just assume that there's going to be an M2 fight around the corner every day, or that, you know, some idiot's going to jump their Titan to a beacon every day for the next year to provide content and kill Titans. Otherwise, they're just going to end up sitting there and docking up, and nothing's going to happen. Now, the second thing I want to bring up, and this is my little spin on the war stuff, because I think this is important. We're getting to the point in the war where both sides have killed all the unattended structures that they're going to be able to kill. I know that PanFam's got, or not PanFam, but Pappy in general has maybe another, I guess they've killed slightly less than half of our keep stars in Delve. They have slightly.
They've barely cracked a quarter of the damn things.
A quarter of them, so they still got a lot more to go.
Way to go, boys!
They got a long way to
Get
go.
out there.
Your premise there is wrong. There are a ton of structures.
Take some more vacation time.
There are
Relax. Enjoy the grind. Embrace it.
They're going to be grinding this stuff through, but at some point, all of that's going to be gone, and the final decision is, when are you going to brute force try to take 1DQ? And I think the value proposition for doing that has just gone up considerably, because it's going to be a hell of a lot more expensive to do that than it was a week ago. And I don't think it's something that they're going to be able to fast forward and try to push out before these changes go through. So in the end, I think it's going to be much harder for you guys to try to do what you want to do there. I get the feeling, I mean, this is the kind of massive change to the game that could justify everybody sitting around thinking, do we still want to keep doing this? I will be interested to see what Dunk's guys and what Ken's guys in their smoke-filled rooms are talking about in terms of these changes and what the impact is going to be on whether this war continues for another 6 months or not. That's my question. I think it's going to be interesting to see.
There's no chance this war lasts another 6 months. It's going to be probably a year at least.
You think it's going to keep going?
I ain't going fucking anywhere. I'm staying right the hell where I am until everything in 1DQ is fucking a wreck. I got 12 Titans. I'll throw all of them at it. I don't care.
I think.
I mean, are we supposed to be doing like the? Is this like a testosterone thing? Am I supposed to start like beating?
Yeah,
my,
no,
like,
you got the black shirt on. Go for it.
You know, I bring it, right? Like we'll see. Like the thing about this is not, oh my God, 1DQ1, this, that, or the other thing, 6 months, a year, whatever. What I think the biggest reason why the war is going to keep going is because Legacy is pot committed, right? PanFam is not pot committed. You can talk about how you're going to be here forever, and that's fine. But Legacy is in a situation where they are losing any home to go back to. Their regions are torched, and they are staging in T5ZI, which is right next to 1DQ1. So extraction is not really an option for Legacy, regardless of whether they want to, regardless of the situation in their bank accounts, regardless of their pets, failure cascading. We're seeing graph after graph after graph. Anyway, the point is that it's going to be really hard for them to extract. How the hell are they going to pull out without? I don't know how it's going to go. But
let's be clear, extraction isn't an option for goons either.
Yeah, we're not leaving. I mean, their hope is, Villy's whole hope for this entire thing is that, you know, we're all committed to this thing, and boo, scary boo, and goons are going to run to Saranen. And we've been saying we are more interested in killing your Titans than basically anything else. And Villy and crew have gone for a big structure grind kind of thing. And apparently, I mean, we don't really know what the numbers are going to come out, but it turns out that I guess a single Titan is about to cost more than a keep star, when previously it was like 2.5 Titans per keep star. So we really just sort of have to see how things fall here. But even if Legacy wanted to get out of this, their extraction process is going to be very difficult. They have to hope that we give up and go away or whatever. Sorry, that's not happening. And then once the wood chipper has run its course there, we'll just have to see how things stand.
There
I
you
mean,
go.
we got nothing. But
I think it's I've been saying this from the beginning of this whole war, right? That it's going to be back and forth. It's not easy, and this is about morale. And people like to talk about ISK and numbers, and this. It's about morale. And one side eventually will not have the morale to field what's needed to fight. And that's what this is all about. It's about people logging in. And people can talk about structures burning, and we're laying waste to, we as the Eve people are laying waste to more destruction ever in this game than ever's been seen before, right? And people are enjoying it. But at some point, one side, the morale is not going to be there. Now, I have a lot of friends in the Imperium, and their morale is sky high. And I have a lot of friends on the Pappy side, and their morale seems sky high right now. So I wouldn't have predicted that this far into the war, everybody would feeling as good about their side as they are.
That's the really weird part about this war is like you have the entire galaxy piled in, literally living next door to each other, fighting every day, and this has been going on for months, and there's no sign of either side cracking.
Right. Yeah. Each side.
Well, that's not true. That is absolutely not true. And I think one of the things I'm gonna interrupt all this feel good horseshit
we got
to twist the fucking knife a little bit.
Reason.
You know, we're going in here. Oh, it's all well and good to say, oh, Piss P's morale is sky high and nobody is breaking or whatever. Except, oh wait, I'm sorry. What of all of the evidence of the slopes we have been showing on the Meta Show repeatedly? PanFam's doing fine. Legacy is eating shit. On a daily basis, Legacy is eating shit. And that is reflected in terms of morale and the fact that you have so many slopes. Your alliances are in early or in some cases late stage failure cascade. Your pets that flip sides in Faith Ablis. You used to have IGC who was on your side. Now they're torching shit in Faith Ablis. They're shooting Evictus. You're down to Esoteria. You're down to Faith Ablis. That is not the sign. Slopes, you don't see slopes on the PanFam side, and their morale is sky high. They're doing great. In the Imperium, you're not seeing slopes. You look at Legacy, it's a very different
stars.
All right, we're turning the show into open comm, so go ahead, Tom.
So I'll just say this, right? I'll stick by my point. Morale is not measured in statistics. There's lies in statistics, right? As much as people want to say that, for me to point to a bunch of stats that show numbers about destruction, about Imperium and all that stuff, how high is your morale right now? It's sky high right now, right? So I disagree with this point that statistics determine people's morale. I go into comms with our people. I speak with the leaders of the other Pappy Coalition things. And it's not people concerned about graphs any more than Imperium folks are concerned about these keep stars, right? And I stick to that. It's on both sides, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable that both sides feel that they're winning the war completely. And I know you're going to disagree with me, Alex, but that's what I see. And I take it at face value from when I talk to Imperium people. They swear to me they're on the verge of victory, right?
Good.
And so I have to say, we're nowhere close to the end of this war.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
keep moving into the galactic southeast, southwest, because at any moment, Gunstorm and the Imperium is going to break. Everything is going to be fine if you're in Legacy. It's safe to invest more into this. You don't have to worry about any of this CCP stuff. Everything is going to be just fine.
I don't know why we're focusing on Legacy here.
Go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
PanFam is the one propping up this war. Legacy is just also
when 3 blocks enter, 2 blocks leave. So when this whole thing kicked off, 1 block was gonna die, and it's just a question of whether the Imperium dies. And if the Imperium does not die, who still has a chair when the music stops? We still have a chair. We're not going anywhere. Legacy, good luck.
Well, it's clearly going to be when Initiative and Brave work together and form a new coalition.
That's yeah, because that's going to happen. All right.
Hey, I just want to say one thing when we're rolling up here. I'm currently on the CSM. I'm running for re-election. So if I can get on the goon ticket, that'd be awesome too.
We are always willing to make deals. We're all adults. We all get together in Vegas. There's always opportunities for negotiation. And
are we getting to wrap up time now?
I think we're at wrap up time now.
So can I make my 2 cents for people?
Go right ahead, Mike.
So basically, all of the Eve players outside of this whole like in-game persona stuff. Like we are a special breed of video game nerd. We're seeing hopefully this pandemic starting to wrap up on its effects on our lives. There is Eve Vegas coming up in the fall. I hope that next year the CCP driven events start up and we start being able to get people together in person again. And key to that is people getting the vaccine and staying safe and not getting it, being the last person to get it. So I would urge everybody who plays Eve, no matter what side you're on, like do your part, stay safe, get the vaccine so we can all go to these meetups together and have drinks and have fun and tell war stories. I don't want to go to any more Sino vigils over people who've died from this thing. So that's my message to everyone, regardless of what your alliance or corp or whatever is in the game. Please, I want to see you in person. I want to go back to Iceland. I want to go back to all over the place to see you all. So let's make that happen.
Ken, you have a final thing? Anything final?
I think
I'll use your real name too if you want.
No, it doesn't really matter. I am looking forward to going to Vegas. I have a job that's currently scheduled for October 4th to the 28th. So I may be flying in work clothes at the last minute, but I'll be drinking my Coca-Cola along with you guys drinking your beverage of choice. And we'll all have fun. And hopefully there won't be a final keep start timer on like Saturday night. We all got to leave and go back to our hotel rooms
Exactly.
and log in to fight. But that said, I am definitely looking forward to some in real life meetups. And, you know, the war, it's all funny. We all poke each other, blah, blah, blah. But no one's going to kill the Imperium. No one's going to kill PL because there's too much stuff outside of the game to keep everyone together. Sure, your homes may change, whatever, but to kill a group nowadays is next to impossible. But that doesn't mean that I don't want all your shit to be wrecked. So you could be homeless and in the game, and I'm perfectly fine with that.
All right, Nom Nom.
I'm looking forward to Eve Vegas more than anything else. Like, forget the war, forget everything. Like, the war is what it is, but we have Eve Vegas is happening this year. That's awesome. Dunk, I hope you make it there. I hope you bring the briefcase. Anyone who has met Dunk in person knows what the briefcase is. Anyone who doesn't know what the briefcase is, well, you should come to Eve Vegas.
You better.
Yeah, this year I get an autopilot to Eve Vegas, so it's going to be even easier.
I'm almost out of that blends, though. I kind of need you to bring me another bottle. We got to work this out. So, all right, boss, do you have any final words before we wrap this up?
I got nothing. I got a nice little nap in that. We'll just have to see how all this plays out, and yeah, you know, tune into next week's episode to find out whether we have more scarcity or more war action, or where the Titans are at in terms of the price point. And I don't know. Maybe I'll get a better easy chair for when we have industry disruptions. Yeah, that's all I got. My simple mitten brain can't handle all of this technical industry stuff. So I appreciate everybody putting up with my little nap, and you know, we'll hopefully have some more hard details for this when CCP tells us something.
All right. So that has been, I think that's the last word. I want to thank Ken and Aminet Dunk for joining us today. This has been the Meta Show for March the 27th, 2021. I'm Brisker Ball, aka Brian. I'm sitting beside the Matani, aka Alex. And we will see you guys next week for another edition of the Meta Show. You stay classy, New Eden.